great a disappointment. Winston's Democrat of choice was not Franklin at all, but his gubernatorial predecessor, the happy warrior Alfred E. Smith. And Smith had proved more obliging than FDR, even allowing Churchill and Baruch to escort him on stage at Manhattan's Tammany Hall, where he rousingly excoriated long-shot mayoral challengers Republican Fiorello LaGuardia and Socialist Norman Thomas. Do they take the citizens of this city for mental defectives, for their attacks on his flamboyant ally, Major James J. Gentleman Jimmy Walker? In Washington, the far less flamboyant President Herbert Hoover also took a meeting with Churchill. Their conversation, while hardly edifying, was at least polite, quite the achievement considering that during the Great War, Churchill had attempted having the great humanitarian Hoover arrested for shipping foodstuffs beyond enemy German lines. Time heals some wounds. Things were stirring when Churchill returned to Manhattan in late October, stirring and shaking and crashing. Following an early lunch, he found himself strolling about Lower Manhattan. I happened to be walking down Wall Street at the worst moment of the panic, and a perfect stranger who recognized me invited me to enter the gallery of the Stock Exchange, Churchill would recall. It was packed, with a record 722 visitors, as the once booming stock market collapsed before their very eyes. Minutes later, nervous authorities shuttered gallery doors, and Winston Spencer Churchill, as so often his practice, now possessed a position at history's ringside. I expected to see pandemonium, he soon wrote, but the spectacle that met my eyes was one of surprising calm and orderliness. There are only 1,200 members of the New York Stock Exchange, each of whom has paid over £100,000 for his ticket. These gentlemen are precluded by the strongest rules from running or raising their voices unduly. So there they were, walking to and fro like a slow-motion picture of a disturbed ant-heap, offering each other enormous blocks of securities at 1/3 of the old prices and half their present value, and for many minutes together finding no one strong enough to pick up the sure fortunes they were compelled to offer. On Fifth Avenue, that morose evening, Churchill dined with Bernard Baruch and with 40 of Baruch's associates, among them the most influential and wealthiest of New York bankers and investors. This October 24th, 1929, Black Thursday, the stock market plunged 11%, before steadying itself to close at a relatively less disastrous loss of 6.38%. Baruch, either onto something or not, jokingly addressed his guests as friends and former millionaires. In Springfield, on Monday, October 28th, Franklin Roosevelt wasted no time in converting the crash into political capital. If such a market debacle ever took place in a Democratic administration, he maintained, it would immediately be hailed as the result of business bungling by the party in power. As if on cue, a telegram, "Will they blame the stock market on the Democrats? Al," arrived. Most present assumed it from Al Smith. It was a hoax. Democrats in Springfield might chuckle. So might Bernard Baruch. He, after all, had already fled the market. Others with far fewer resources behind them found it more difficult to laugh, among these being a fellow guest at Churchill's own Savoy Plaza hostelry. Under my very window, Churchill recalled, a gentleman cast himself down 15 stories and was dashed to pieces, causing a wild commotion and the arrival of the fire brigade. Churchill lingered in New York. Wall Street had sustained a roundhouse punch that Thursday. It wobbled but remained on its feet. On Black Tuesday, October 29th, 1929, it crumpled down for the count. The great boom was over. So was Churchill's American expedition. The next morning, at Manhattan's West 14th Street Pier,